Jaeseung is already wanted when he asks for this favor. The warehouse he detonated made him an arsonist on every police channel in the country, and he's calling it in anyway, from hiding, like a man with nothing left to lose because he already lost it. Su-hyeon takes one look at him and laughs. Mr. Terrorist. She means it as a joke. It isn't really one. He doesn't laugh back. He needs someone on Hajin around the clock. Somebody who can fight off more than one person at a time without blinking. That part's easy for Su-hyeon. The second favor isn't. He wants her to personally teach Sejun how to fight. Not the gym version, not sparring with rules. He wants Sejun taught the way you teach someone who's going to need to kill a man and live with it afterward. Su-hyeon doesn't ask why. She already knows why. She just lights another cigarette and goes to find him. She finds Sejun at a boxing gym, throwing soft punches at a heavy bag like the bag is the only thing in the world that won't hit back. She buys her way into the gym in about 30 seconds. Cash, a smile, a threat dressed up as a compliment, and tells the owner she needs the place and a sparring partner, and doesn't owe him an explanation for either. Sejun doesn't know who she is until she says Jaeseung's name. Then everything in his face changes. Is he okay? Is he hurt? Nothing else in the room matters until that's answered. She tells him Jaeseung's fine. Then she tells him the part that actually matters. She's not gentle like Jaeseung. She doesn't care if Sejun's underage or what kind of person that makes her for training him anyway. She wants to know if he's still willing to do whatever it takes to make Jungho pay for what he did to Hajin. He doesn't hesitate. I'll do it. That's all she needed to hear. He gives her the name himself, like he's been carrying it around waiting for someone to ask. Jungho. The man's leg is already torn open from Jaeseung's knife. Still healing. Still vulnerable. Sejun wants to go finish it tonight. Su-hyeon tells him no. Jaeseung has a plan, and tonight isn't part of it. What Sejun gets instead is training. Starting now. She brings in a sparring partner built like a wall. Jungho. Brown-orange hair, hoodie, a calm that should worry you more than yelling would. He doesn't ease Sejun in. He calls it a constitution test, and starts swinging like Sejun's a heavy bag with opinions. Sejun goes down, gets up, goes down again, 12 times by the gym's count. Every hit lands like it's trying to teach his body something his brain won't survive remembering. Su-hyeon crouches next to him on the mat and asks if he wants to quit. Just say it. She's not wasting her time on a maybe. He grins through blood. I found someone who's gonna teach me like this, he says, no matter what happens to me. Across the city in a hospital room, Jungho is teaching a lesson of his own. His doctor tries to explain the limits of what medicine can do, the artery he was lucky to keep, the muscle damage that takes time to heal. Han doesn't want to hear what's possible. He wants to hear what the doctor is going to make happen. 3 months. If his leg isn't fully working by then, he promises to take the man's money, his job, everyone he loves. Then he opens a laptop, shows him a recording. Things the doctor's done, alone, to children who never had a say in it. Recorded, saved, insurance. The doctor doesn't argue anymore. Han never raises his voice once. That should scare you more than if he had. Later, the man Han actually trusts, Director Kim, checks in. They've already sent people to watch Sejun and to watch Hajin. Kim assumes nobody's crazy enough to run a full-time detail on a teenage girl. Han corrects him. Someone is exactly that crazy. He's already on her, 24 hours a day. That someone is Joseph. Bald, quiet, built like a man who's never had to raise his voice to win an argument. He's been parked outside Hajin's cram school for days, and the 2 men sent to tail her have gotten sloppy enough that even she's clocked them turning around every time she does. She calls them out directly. They deny it. Joseph doesn't bother arguing the point. He starts swinging, fast and final, and within seconds both men are on the ground, one of them coughing up whatever's left of his dignity. Hajin asks if they should call the cops. Joseph tells her there's no evidence, so there's no point. Crushing guys like this is the only remedy that sticks. She asks his name. He's almost shy giving it up. Joseph, 22, 3 years older than her, and somehow that's the detail that embarrasses him most. Back at the gym, the bruises start adding up in a different direction. Su-hyeon watches Sejun get knocked out again and again by a partner brought in just for variety. And when Dohyun, Sejun's training partner, mostly a boxer himself, voices concern for him, she shuts it down hard. Worrying about someone else's pain isn't kindness. Sometimes it's just a way of getting in the way. Then she reminds him, almost casually, that he still owes a debt for damage he did to people once. Damage that doesn't disappear just because he feels bad about it now. Dohyun doesn't ask what she means. He already knows. That's when the late arrival shows up. Bloodied, scarred, soaked in someone else's blood, reporting he'd just finished taking care of some rats. This one is different from Jungho. This one is Rhino. Jisoo, technically, though nobody calls him that. One of Su-hyeon's people. And he's furious, because what he was promised was tutoring some kids, and what he's actually walked into involves real gangsters with real money behind them. Su-hyeon doesn't apologize for the scope creep. She tells him the job now includes killing every last one of them. He doesn't get a say in it for long. Someone shouts a warning across the gym, "Knife behind you," and a man Rhino didn't clock fast enough puts a blade in his back before anyone can stop it. Rhino barely reacts. He calls it getting shanked like it's a parking ticket, grabs the attacker's arm hard enough to make him scream, and starts asking questions. Which crew? Whose orders? The man doesn't have real answers. He's hired muscle, nobody's real soldier, and the lack of a real answer is exactly what makes Rhino snap. He breaks the man's wrist for wasting his time, calls it a lack of connection tax, while Su-hyeon casually asks someone to wrap his arm, like this happens every week. Maybe it does. Sejun watches all of it, and absorbs more than the violence. He's starting to understand exactly what kind of people Jaeseung actually surrounds himself with. He asks Su-hyeon carefully why Jaeseung's risking everything for Hajin specifically. All she gives him is one line. Hajin reminds him of someone. No name, no follow-up. So Sejun gives her something instead. His real reason. The one underneath the one everyone assumes. It's not just about what happened to Hajin anymore. It's about how weak he felt standing there, unable to stop it. If he'd held back one more second that night, none of it happens to her. He can't sleep knowing that. He needs to tear Junwoo Han apart with his own hands, not because it's noble, but because it's the only way he'll ever feel like he actually protected anyone. Su-hyeon tells him flatly that he sounds pretty stupid. Oh, good, he says, like that's exactly the validation he needed. Then she gives him the only rule that actually applies here. Do what you want. Own every consequence of it. No room for self-pity afterward. Somewhere else in the city, a 20-year-old in a holding room is getting the opposite kind of pressure. Lim Jung-hyun, red-haired kickboxer trained, already locked up after a failed knife attack on a gym connected to Jaeseung, sits across from a detective who wants the name above him. Lim laughs it off, plays dumb, calls it a waste of time. The detective doesn't raise his voice either. He lays it out calmly. Taking down one boss changes nothing. Another one rises immediately. And Lim's whole life has run on excuses for choices that were always his own. There's an edge under the calm. Lim doesn't break. Not yet. The detective leaves the door open anyway and walks out first. Back at the boxing gym, Rhino's patience with Dohyun finally runs out completely. Someone mentions, almost in passing, that Dohyun used to rip off weaker kids at his old school. Rhino goes still for half a second. Then he stops holding back. The punch that lands is the first one in this entire stretch of training Dohyun didn't see coming, and it isn't an accident. Rhino tells him flat out, people who use strength to hurt people weaker than themselves deserve exactly this. He's not coaching anymore, he's collecting. Dohyun apologizes between hits. Rhino tells him not to apologize to him, apologize to every kid he ever hurt, his entire life, with every punch that follows. Dohyun goes down hard, dazed, and the only thing he can manage afterward is asking quietly if Rhino's only obligated to follow the boxing rules right now. Rhino's answer doesn't leave him much room. He's not a coach in this moment. Going easy was never actually his job. Dohyun's punishment continues in the ring days later, and Rhino isn't done teaching lessons the hard way. Won't hit you with my right hand, he tells Dohyun mid-round, then uses it anyway without ever throwing the actual punch. Just enough pressure to prove Dohyun's still flinching at the wrong moments. Don't think with your head, Rhino tells him. Use your instincts. Dohyun gets caught the same way twice before it sinks in. Off to the side, while Dohyun's still absorbing the lesson, Sejun says something to Su-hyeon that isn't really a question. There's someone he needs to kill with his own hands, or cripple trying. She doesn't blink. She asks, is it true the person deserves it? No excuses, no circumstances that change the answer? Yes, Sejun says, for me, because he has to be torn apart and killed. She doesn't try to talk him out of it. She's carried that exact kind of anger herself before. She doesn't offer comfort, and she doesn't offer doubt either. Just a flat kind of understanding that some scores don't get settled with patience. Sejun corners Su-hyeon with the question he's been sitting on. Jinwoo Han's leg is still healing. Does that actually give him a real shot at winning? She won't promise him anything. She's not a fortune teller, she tells him, and she's not going to lie and say he's safe. Han isn't safe either, not from what's coming for him. All Sejun can do is keep training and stop asking questions that are really just fear wearing a different outfit. He's still turning that over when Su-hyeon catches him from behind in a loose hold, studying his face a little too closely. Seeing it in person, she murmurs, he looks more alike than I thought. She doesn't say who she means. That's when Hajin walks in. She sees Su-hyeon's arm around Sejun's neck before she sees anything else. Sejun startles, stammering out questions nobody answers. Hajin doesn't move. She looks straight at Su-hyeon and asks the only thing she actually came in wanting to know. What are you doing to Sejun? The question she asks isn't really about the arm. Su-hyeon deflects with a joke, then does something else. She introduces herself properly, by name, like a woman who knows exactly what kind of fire she's standing next to and isn't afraid of getting burned. Hajin's anger curdles into something worse, guilt. Jaeseung, an arson suspect hiding somewhere with no one watching his back. Sejun, dragged into a war that started because of her. She wonders out loud if that's the price everyone around her keeps paying. Su-hyeon doesn't let that stand. People who feel guilt did something wrong, she tells her. People who don't, the ones who hurt others and walk away clean, those are the ones who pay eventually, on someone else's schedule, not Hajin's. Hajin just needs to stop carrying weight that isn't hers. It's a small mercy. It doesn't last the night. The group goes out to celebrate Hajin's first real welcome into the circle. Somewhere between the soju and the grilled meat, Dohyun gets handed a drink he didn't ask for, poured by the one they call Bull. Bull, the one Changgun's old crew still talks about in whispers, the one who supposedly walked into a rival gang alone, barehanded, and left with everyone else on the floor. Bull, who knives don't touch. Bull goes down after one shot of soju. It's almost funny. The legend, face first on the table, snoring before the second round even arrives. Everyone laughs. Nobody thinks to be worried that the most dangerous person at the table just became the easiest one to carry out the door. It stops being funny when the door slams open. Changgun walks in with two men behind him, and he's not here for the bullshit pleasantries. He's looking at Dohyun like a man finally collecting on a debt. The rim goes cold fast. The kids are unarmed. For 1 second, it looks like the night is about to turn into something nobody walks away from clean. Su-hyeon doesn't ask questions. She tells Sejun to get Hajin out of the way and turns to face 3 grown men by herself, alone, like the math already favors her. It isn't a fight, it's a correction. One man goes down clutching his eye, screaming about something he never saw coming. Another brags about doing judo as a teenager, right before he's folded in half. A third calls himself the leader of the block, like rank means anything to someone who already decided how this ends before he walked over. It doesn't take long. When it's over, Su-hyeon crouches next to the only one still talking and starts asking real questions. He gives her a name, Chief Kim, 2 underlings sent to turn everything upside down. That's the whole operation, supposedly. Su-hyeon doesn't buy it. Nobody sends 2 men to do a job that small unless the job was never the point. She's right. Back in his office, Kim lays it out for his own bodyguard like it's obvious. Changgun was never supposed to win. He was bait. Jaeseung went down because he was alone, with nobody left to protect him. That's the only reason the same play worked on him. Su-hyeon isn't alone. She has people now. People who can be threatened, interrogated, blamed for what she does to defend them. Kim doesn't need to beat her in a fight. He needs the police to catch her standing over a body, and her own loyalty does the rest of the work for him. The bodyguard isn't convinced 2 random thugs could ever get close enough to matter. Kim doesn't care if they win. He cares that the trap gets sprung at all. It started with a man named Ju Changgun, sitting in a chair he didn't choose, in an office that belongs to someone smarter than him. Director Kim doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. He already knows exactly what Changgun is. A bully who only respects whoever's currently winning, who folds the second the math changes. So Kim changes the math out loud. An offer, framed like generosity. A reminder that Jaeseung is wanted now. On the run, no longer someone Changgun has to be afraid of. Changgun curses Jaeseung's name on cue, like a man proving a point he doesn't realize he's proving for someone else. Kim smiles. The hook is already set. He doesn't even have to pull yet. When Su-hyeon hears the shape of the plan secondhand, she calls it exactly what it is. Bullshit. If they want to fight, they can have one. Face to face, no setups, no bait, no script. She sends her people home with Bull still unconscious between them and stays behind alone to finish what she started. That's when the second wave shows up. 2 men, badges out, claiming drug division, here on a tip. Su-hyeon doesn't buy that either. Not the badges, not the timing, not the lines they're clearly reciting from somewhere else. When she says so out loud, one of them decides the fastest way to shut her up is a gun, pressed straight to her skull. The man holding the gun has done this before. People flinch, people talk. She doesn't move. He tells her this is her only chance. She tells him something else, that she can spot someone who's killed before, just by the eyes. His specifically. He doesn't believe her. He should have. The woman who didn't flinch. The man is about to learn exactly what that costs him. There's a gunshot. It hits someone, and for one breathless second, nobody, including him, understands what just happened, or who actually fired. Detective nodded. He's been watching the whole thing unfold from a few feet away, and his patience for fake badges runs out the exact moment that trigger gets pulled. Detective Jang is right behind him, already moving. In the chaos, it's Jungho who steps forward. To Su-hyeon first, vouching for Jang as someone real, someone safe. Then to Jang directly, quieter, a reminder that he's the reason Jang is still breathing at all, from the warehouse, from before. Jang doesn't argue. He just looks tired in the specific way people look when they're being reminded of a debt they already knew they owed and can't pay off. Su-hyeon repeats something Jaeseung apparently said about him once, that he can't fight, but he's righteous. It isn't flattering. It isn't meant to be. It also isn't wrong, and Jang knows it, which is worse. Jaeseung doesn't know any of this. He's somewhere overseas, on a bench, remembering a face from home he hasn't let himself think about in days. He left her with Su-hyeon. Guns are hard to get in Korea, he tells himself. Like that settles anything. It doesn't. There are people waiting for him to come back, and waiting isn't the same as safe. Later, over coffee, nobody's actually drinking. The 3 of them lay it out plainly. This isn't a couple of dirty cops moonlighting for cash. The corruption reaches into the drug division itself, maybe higher than that. If they can prove it, actually prove it, not just suspect it out loud over coffee. It might help Jaeseung's case. Might. Jang says that word carefully, like he doesn't trust it either. What Jaeseung did to get here was big enough that even a clean network exposure probably doesn't erase it. It's still the only lever any of them have left to pull, and there's a lead nobody's followed all the way down yet. Kang Ji-yeon walks in. Young, sharp-tongued, exactly the kind of person nobody expects to be holding the most dangerous information in the room. She's been tracing the dark web drug pipeline for them, following the money instead of the rumors. A shipping company, a delivery worker living a little too well for what the job actually pays. She was one parcel away from confirming exactly who that was when the factory making the product went up in flames and took the answer with it. She wants out. She's done enough, she says. They tell her it's enough to start with. They have a thread now, even without a name attached to it yet. Give them a day. A day is all it takes. Somewhere across town, a woman is screaming at a boutique clerk over a handbag, like the clerk personally owes her more than an apology. She doesn't know yet that her own spending, designer brands on a salary that doesn't come close to explaining them, is the exact reason someone is about to find her alone in a bathroom with nowhere left to run. Su-hyeon doesn't ask nicely. She doesn't need a confession, just a name and an address. She gets both, the hard way. And the woman who thought she was the main character of her own complaint 20 minutes ago ends up exactly where everyone who underestimates Su-hyeon usually ends up, bleeding, talking, and grateful it stops there. The trail leads to a delivery worker, finishing his last drop of the day. He's careful, unbothered, almost helpful, right up until Su-hyeon makes it clear she isn't police and isn't leaving without names. Han Junwoo, Chief Kim, Team Leader Kang, the factory's new location. She wants all of it, and she wants it now. He smiles like she's the one who just made a mistake walking up to him alone. Because the delivery driver isn't just a delivery driver. He tells her exactly what he actually does for a living, making problems disappear quietly, permanently, with nobody left to ask questions afterward. And he tells her, almost gently, that she's already one of those problems. He isn't interested in a clean kill. He wants to enjoy this first. And he says so like it's a compliment. She doesn't run. She doesn't fight yet either. She asks for time to introduce herself properly. He laughs and gives it to her. Flattered, careless, already certain he's won. She opens her mouth to start talking, and the first thing out of it is that she lies. Naturally, without even trying. The delivery man is down in an abandoned building, bleeding from a beating he hasn't earned a break from yet. He's the one who's been making problems disappear without a sound, the one who threatened to do the same to Su-hyeon not long ago. None of that helps him now. Rhino, the one they call Bull in the old circles, isn't interested in conversation. He's interested in results, and he gets them the fast way. Fists first, threats after. By the time Su-hyeon takes over the questioning, the man is past performing toughness. He's just talking, fast, eager to seem useful. He admits the operation fakes its shipments, swaps the real product through a delivery company's own paperwork, buries the trail in false records, long enough to relocate before police can search anything. He claims loose ties to Director Kim's people, nothing more specific, and when Su-hyeon presses for a location, he laughs through broken teeth. They already expected this. Team leader Kang got beaten too, and look how far that got anyone. Then comes the part that actually matters. The men watching Hajin were never watching Hajin. She was bait. The real target was always Sejun. That's the moment the threat stops being abstract. Joseph notices it first, walking Hajin home from her cram school. The men who've been tailing her for weeks are just gone. No warning, no replacement crew, nothing. He doesn't relax. People who disappear that cleanly usually had somewhere more important to be. And somewhere across town, a man with bleached hair is already closing in on Sejun. Sejun recognizes the grin before he recognizes the face. A bully from years back, older now and meaner, wearing Director Kim's leash like it's a promotion. The needle goes into his neck before he can turn around. And the man laughs about it, loud and triumphant, certain he's just ended the fight before it started. He's wrong. Sejun was never downed. He let the man believe it, baited the gloating, and when the bleached hair bully gets close enough to enjoy his own victory, Sejun puts him on the ground for real. No drug saves him from that. What's left on the pavement afterward is a syringe. Sejun picks it up, already suspicious. Sedatives work immediately, and whatever just hit his bloodstream hasn't done anything yet. He plans to bring it straight to Su-hyeon. He doesn't get the chance. A man in a suit is already waiting for him, calm in a way that makes the calm itself feel like a threat. He tells Sejun plainly, that's the same drug they used on Lee Young-gun. Skip a dose, and the withdrawal will be the kind no hospital can treat. He'll deliver it personally, on schedule, like medicine. All Sejun has to do is keep his mind on the upcoming match with Chairman Han. That's the leash, and Sejun is already wearing it. Above this, in a different room entirely, Han isn't pleased, recovering, irritable, and out of patience with the man standing across from him. Director Kim has nothing solid to offer. Jaeseung and Su-hyeon are operating like they were trained for exactly this. No evidence, no mistakes, nothing to grab onto. Their military pasts are sealed. There's no leverage to pull there either. Han doesn't bother hiding his contempt. He tells Kim plainly that he's either going to take real action or stop pretending calm is the same thing as control. Kim brings up his old suggestion again. Give Sejun the experimental drug directly. See if it produces something more useful than what happened with Young-gun. Han doesn't say yes. He says wait. And he says it like a threat dressed up as patience. If Kim screws this up too, the good treatment stops. Kim says he understands. Then he goes and does it anyway. He tells his own bodyguard he'll take full responsibility and has him administer the drug to Sejun without Han's permission, betting that results will outweigh the disobedience if it works fast enough. It doesn't go the way either of them expects. The drug hits Sejun like something euphoric, something weightless, like his body has stopped keeping score of every fight it's been in. He feels like he could beat Chairman Han right now, beat anyone. He turns that feeling on the man who gave it to him. The bodyguard gets exactly what he asked for, and far more than he wanted. Speed he can't track, force he can't absorb, a kid half his experience suddenly hitting like nothing has a limit. He's losing badly by the time Su-hyeon arrives, tracking Sejun by motorcycle through the gym's own location app, already turning a theory over in her head, that this whole match against Han might be less about revenge than it looks, that someone upstream may be using it to advertise the drug itself. She doesn't get to finish that thought before she finds him mid-rampage. He's already hit the ground once. He gets back up anyway. Sejun's knuckles are split open, and he doesn't seem to notice, doesn't seem to feel anything that should be slowing him down, because right now, nothing is. The man underneath him used to give orders. Now he's just trying to get an arm up, to block. Then a second arm wraps around Sejun's throat from behind, and it isn't a warning, it's a choke. Applied clean, applied total. The strength that felt unstoppable 30 seconds ago drains out of him, exactly the way real strength always does, completely, like it was never his to begin with. Su-hyeon doesn't gloat. She just holds until he stops moving. Everyone's equal before the choke, she tells him, once he can hear it. Mess with something you can actually mess with, Sejun. Once Sejun is breathing normally again, he describes what the high felt like. Light, untouchable, like clouds instead of ground. Su-hyeon doesn't romanticize it back to him. She tells him flatly that it's a trap, dressed up as power. The kind of swamp that's easy to walk into and brutal to walk back out of. She decides then that guessing isn't good enough anymore. She needs to know exactly what this drug is, and the fastest way there runs through Jaesung's police contacts. It runs straight to Lee Young-gun. He isn't the same person who lost that fight months ago. He can barely digest food now. His words come out broken, the language slipping further every week, and the doctors treating him have no precedent and no cure. This isn't normal withdrawal, and everyone in the room knows it. Su-hyeon, Detective Na, and Detective Jang press him anyway, because right now he's the only one who's lived inside this operation and survived long enough to talk about it. And he talks. The organization recruits orphans and kids with nowhere else to go, drugs the ones who show promise, then sells the new product to buyers using footage of those same kids fighting. He describes meeting Han at a rotating penthouse, not the factory that burned, eyes covered the whole way there, so even he couldn't map the route back. He describes a half-brother with money written into the way he carries himself. And finally, pushed past the point where he can hold anything back, he gives up a name. Not Han Junwoo, Han Junwoo, his mother's surname, the one record search will never find, because no one was ever looking for it. Somewhere else, that half-brother is already moving on a different front entirely. He'd tried other angles first, digging for weaknesses in Su-hyeon's crew, chasing down an old rumor about someone who used to run with gangsters before going straight, and none of it produced anything usable. So now he wants something simpler. A list, every corrupt prosecutor with their name on a particular registry, and he wants it fast. When his assistant mentions that Han just buried his mother's memory at her own grave on the anniversary of her death, the half-brother doesn't pretend to care. Once people are dead, he says, they're dead. Taking care of the dead is somebody else's job. Then he adds something colder, almost an afterthought. Tell Han their father wants him home this week. Nobody has mentioned a father before this. Now there's one giving orders from somewhere above even the half-brother. And nothing about who he is or why his summons matters enough to interrupt everything else gets explained. Han, for his part, is alone at that grave when none of that reaches him yet. His leg has healed enough to walk, though nothing harder than walking yet. He's not thinking about his mother's ideology right now, not the speech she gave him as a child about the weak being used by the strong. He's thinking about how badly his plan has already gone, how the only path left, if he can't win clean, is to take everyone down with him on the way out. He thinks about the kid who keeps coming back no matter how many times he's been knocked down, the one he calls a bulldozer wearing a hunting dog's instincts. He doesn't sound afraid saying it. He sounds like a man recalculating the cost of losing, which is exactly why Su-hyeon and Detective Jang go digging into who Han used to be before any of this started. They find a jiu-jitsu gym first, and a limping, stammering attendant who clams up the second the questions get specific, tells them to wait for the director instead. The director, when he finally shows up, doesn't stay quiet for long once the pressure starts. His name is Park Jung-yeon, a former national coach, and what he remembers about a young Han Junwoo doesn't match the man currently running half the underground from a hospital bed. He was the most skilled grappler on that team, regardless of weight class, timid, withdrawn outside the mat. The only place he ever looked happy was inside a gi, guarding from the bottom, blocking attack after attack like that was the safest place in the world to be. Then, something happened. A championship, a second-place finish that should have been first, against a rival who beat him fair on paper and dirty everywhere else. After that loss, the teammates who used to spar with Han started getting hurt, one after another, like something in him had stopped recognizing the difference between practice and punishment. The reason traces back to that one match, the one he should have won. That rival, Park Jung-yeon says, had used illegal drugs. In the gym locker room, a man on the phone, sweating through his shirt. He's just been asked about Junwoo's past, and he already knows what that means. Drugs, prison, a family that starves without him. He calls his contact in a panic, begging for advice, and on the other end of that call, a voice reacts with nothing but contempt. Whatever this man is afraid of, the person he's calling isn't afraid of anything. He doesn't get to finish the call. A woman steps out of the shadows behind him with a baseball bat already swinging. He goes down before he even registers her as a threat. This is Su-hyeon, and she doesn't do subtle. She drags him into a locker room chair and starts asking questions the way someone asks when they already know the answer matters more than the man giving it. His name is Jinhyung. He used to be an athlete. Now he's limping, broke, and terrified of the wrong people finding out what he knows. So he talks. What he gives her is years old, but it's the kind of history that explains everything happening right now. Junwoo wasn't always a name people said with fear. He was a kid obsessed with jujitsu, the kind who only looked alive on the mat, talented enough that grown adults underestimated him and paid for it. He had one rule for himself: no shortcuts, no drugs, win clean or don't win at all. That rule made him an enemy to exactly one person, a senior teammate, 5 years older, who lost to him and never let it go. Talented in his own right, but the kind of talented that needs politics and bullying to feel secure. He hated that Junwoo trained like a kid with nothing to prove and somehow had nothing to fear either. When the team's coach floated the idea of doping before a major competition, Junwoo shut it down in front of everyone, humiliating the coach on the spot. Changgyu laughed. Not at the coach, at something else entirely, an idea forming. At the actual qualifier for a spot on the Asian Games, Changgyu beat him clean, on paper. Underneath that result was a drug that worked better than anyone expected, and Junwoo didn't find out the truth until it had already cost him everything he was fighting for. Here's where the story stops being about a tournament. Junwoo made a different kind of promise to his mother, as a kid, standing outside a door he wasn't allowed past. He told her he'd get stronger, that he'd make her able to live in that house with her head up. His father watched him keep a version of that promise years later, through a gap in another door, as Junwoo beat his own stepbrother half to death and warned him he might actually kill him next time. Nobody in that family stopped him. Nobody had to. The warning was the point. Junwoo's mother was dying while this was happening, terminal. She'd spent her whole life as collateral in someone else's family, Junwoo's father's family, and her last move on the board was asking that man to take her son in once she was gone. The deal she got back wasn't generous. He later tells Junwoo to win gold at the Asian Games, and the family would acknowledge both of them, him and his mother. Prove it or stay invisible. Changgyu's win didn't just take a medal, it took the only proof Junwoo had that he was worth claiming, that his mother would be acknowledged. She died not long after. Whatever she said to him in those last moments, the story doesn't give it back to us in words, only a smile, and the knowledge that it was the last thing he ever saw of her. At her funeral, Junwoo found Jinhyung and asked him one question: "Did you know about the drugs?" Jinhyung had known. The coach told him to keep quiet, and he believed Junwoo would win regardless, so he said nothing. Days after the funeral, Junwoo offered to train with him. Jinhyung said yes. Junwoo put him in a leg lock, and when the tap came, he didn't release it. He kept going until the ankle gave. Calculated. Not rage, punishment, delivered with a smile, for a silence that cost him his future. That's the same day everyone in that gym learned something about Junwoo that they couldn't unlearn. Changgyu confronted him over the loss anyway, mocking him for losing to a junior. Junwoo's answer wasn't words. He bit the man's ear off. Changgyu never went to the Asian Games. He quit the sport entirely, rather than live with what losing to a clean fighter, and then to an unhinged one, had done to him. Jinhyung's information lines up as something Detective Jong already heard from the gym's old director, a supplier with slit eyes and a scar across his neck, the kind of detail that only means one thing to anyone who's run into Director Kim before. Jong brings this straight to Su-hyeon. Junwoo's drug network and Junwoo's personal history just turned out to be the same investigation. Cut to the man with that scar. Kim is in a private office with someone we already know the shape of. Long hair, gray shirt, recognizable now as the very same Changgyu. They're not reminiscing, they're planning. The target is Junwoo, and Kim's reasoning for wanting him ruined isn't ambition or fear. I've gotten bored of an old toy. Now the family. Junwoo gets summoned to his father's estate, where his stepbrother, the vice president, is already waiting, sniping at him for being late. Their father arrives moments later, and the tone in the house changes immediately. Polite to staff, brutal to family. He puts the vice president on the floor for mishandling blackmail leverage against prosecutors, lecturing him calmly about discipline while he's still catching his breath. Then he turns to Junwoo for a status update. The factory's relocated and running. The drug project is moving forward. And Junwoo offers something nobody in the room expects. He wants to test the new drug on himself, instead of using it on his target, a teenager named Sejun. His father studies him for a long moment, references the old rule Junwoo used to live by, references the mother who's no longer alive to see whatever this is. Then his stepbrother drops the detail that changes the room. Section Chief Kim already drugged Sejun, without permission. Junwoo's father is displeased. Junwoo says nothing in front of him, leaves first, alone, before the rage shows on his face. Once it's just him, the mask comes off completely. Parasitic bastard, he says, and it isn't an insult thrown into the air, it's a decision being made. He finds Kim and starts beating him before either of them finishes a sentence. Kim tries excuses, player management, efficiency, and Junwoo isn't interested in any of it. He wants the real reason Sejun got drugged against orders, and Kim, on his knees, decides honesty is more useful than dignity right now. Don't you also have their blood flowing in you after all? Junwoo stops being interested in talking. Kim notices the shift and plays the only card he has left. Team leader Kang isn't around to hold Junwoo back this time, so he's brought his own leverage. He gestures, and the man standing behind him is introduced with 3 words. Say hi. You two know each other, right? It's Changgyu. Alive, present, and immediately, calling Junwoo by a name he hasn't used in years. His birth name, from a life before any of this. Changgyu hasn't changed his approach. He's still trying to humiliate his way out of a fight he's already lost once. He brings up old injuries like trophies, mocks the loneliness, mocks the violence, and gets the same answer he got the first time, just delivered by a more dangerous version of the same man. There's blood on Junwoo's face that isn't his. Changgyu on the floor is still screaming about an ear. His ear. By the time the room settles, Changgyu is missing his second ear. This isn't a fight. A fight means the other side has a chance. Junwoo isn't even looking at him anymore. He's already walking toward the next one. Kim runs, and Junwoo runs him down, catching him near a display case, beating him into the floor, while Kim's mouth keeps working, even after his body's given up. I don't care whether you guys die or become crippled for life, Junwoo tells him, and for once, it doesn't sound like a threat. It sounds like a fact he's already decided on. That's when the door opens, and the only person in this story who can actually stop him walks through it, his father. And instead of being furious at what Kim did, he calls it efficient. Judging from what I heard, Section Chief Kim's decisions and orders were effective. Then comes the part that actually hurts. The new drug project, the one Junwoo just volunteered his own body for, gets pulled out of his hands entirely and handed to the man he just tried to kill. His father tells him plainly that Kim was never his subordinate. Kim was placed there specifically to manage him, because his judgment and his violence are liabilities, not assets, so that when they see your poor judgment, they can make a business-like judgment and straighten you out. Junwoo's only job now, according to his father, is to focus on the upcoming match against Sejun, entertainment for VIP buyers who want their drug demonstrated on a body, not a controlled experiment run by Junwoo himself. The man who just bled 2 people in front of his father gets told, calmly, to go train. Kim, beaten and bloody, still finds the energy to twist the knife on his way out. Good luck on your training. Junwoo doesn't hit him again. He doesn't have to. You look even shittier when you grin, he says. And that's the whole of his response. Anger with nowhere left to go, because the person who actually controls the leash just yanked it. Across the city, the boy this entire operation is circling around has no idea any of this just happened. Sejun is sparring at the boxing gym, and Dohyun is on the other end of it, getting hit harder and faster than he's ever been hit by this particular friend. He's not losing because Sejun got lucky. He's losing because something about Sejun's body is moving differently than it used to. Faster reactions, more power behind ordinary combinations. The kind of improvement that doesn't happen from training alone. Dohyun doesn't say it out loud yet. He just thinks it, watching Sejun's gloves come at him again. He's become this strong with just a drug? He doesn't get an answer. Sejun's already moving in for the next exchange. He's still smiling when he says it's fine. That's the part that should scare you. Sejun continues sparring Dohyun, and for once Dohyun's not the one struggling. He's staring at Sejun like he doesn't recognize him, because the punches coming back are landing harder than they should. Su-hyeon pulls Dohyun off before the mood turns into something uglier than pride. Then she does something colder. She puts Jungho in the ring instead and tells him to go at 80%. Jungho doesn't argue for long. He grins, cracks his neck, brags about being called the druggie killer back in his prime. Then he stops holding back. The first hit is a blur. Sejun eats it clean. No guard up in time. and the sound alone makes Soo-hyun wince. He goes down. He gets back up. Jungho keeps coming, faster now, meaner, testing something none of them are saying out loud, whether Sejun can survive standing across from someone hitting like they're on the new drug, whether he can take that kind of punishment and still function. He takes it. That's the good news. The bad news comes after. Sejun walks out of the ring feeling hollowed out. Weak in a way sparring alone shouldn't leave him. Soo-hyun doesn't say what she's thinking. She just tells him to go home and rest. He doesn't get the chance. Soo-hyun's phone rings. It's Joseph. Not about Hajin, about Jaeseung. Somebody found him. He's in a hospital, and it isn't good. Sejun's changing out of his gym clothes before she's even finished the sentence. Here's who Jaeseung is, quickly. He trained at the same gym as Han Junwoo years ago, back before Han Junwoo became someone else. He also happens to train at Ki Jiu-Jitsu now, Sejun's gym. Two completely separate parts of his life, and neither of them ever should have touched. Today they did. Jaeseung filled in for a coworker at a meeting, walked in, and recognized the face across the table. Han Junwoo. Not a name that should exist inside a normal office building. Jaeseung panicked, texted Sejun a fragment of a message, "At our company," and went to a restroom to think it through. He never got to send the rest. Han Junwoo followed him in. He doesn't do this because he's cornered. He does it because leaving a loose end alive is worse to him than the risk of beating one half to death in a company bathroom. Jaeseung is on his knees in the company restroom, blood pooling under him, promising he'll never say a word. And the man standing over him already knows he's lying, knows it the way you know your own name. He's not angry about that. He's almost pleased, because now he gets to enjoy this. To the office, Junwoo is just the guy from marketing who limps a little and hates overtime. To the man on the floor, he used to be a training partner, before a loss to a doped-up rival cracked something open in him and never closed back up. That man made the mistake of recognizing an old face today. He's about to find out what that costs. Han Junwoo drives a knee into him first. Then he grabs him by the hair, drags him toward the urinal, and slams his face into it. Once, twice, again, until the man isn't forming full sentences anymore, just pleading between the hits. Han Junwoo doesn't raise his voice once. When it's over, he looks down at what he's done and offers, almost gently, to pay for an implant, provided the man's still alive to need one. The cleanup isn't his problem for long either. His stepbrother, the vice president, born to the family Han Junwoo was adopted into, finds out fast, and he's furious for reasons that have nothing to do with Jaeseung. Move the body, fake an accident, scrub the CCTV. He says it like he's assigning homework, grabbing Han Junwoo by the collar to make sure it lands. Han Junwoo doesn't grab back. He just tells him, flat, that the greatest achievement in his stepbrother's entire life was being born as their father's first child. That's it. That's the whole insult, delivered like a fact nobody can argue with. Get Chief Kim to help if it's too much for you. I have no interest in this company. I'm only here because my father makes me, and my father wants me focused on one thing right now. The match. Sejun. The vice president stalks off calling him a son of a bitch, convinced Han Junwoo is digging his own grave. He's not entirely wrong. He's just wrong about which grave. By the time Jaeseung reaches surgery, the damage is already done, not just to his body, to everyone around him. The doctors say the operation went fine. They also say his face was hard to look at, and they can't promise when or if he wakes up cleanly. A passerby reportedly found him somewhere outside the building, not inside where it happened. The cover-up worked exactly the way it was supposed to. Hajin gets there and can't hold herself together. She's seen this before, a friend broken by people who don't answer for it, and the fear on her face isn't about Jaeseung anymore. It's about who's next. Sejun doesn't say much. He's doing math nobody asked him to do. Jaeseung had no connection to any of this. No debt, no history, nothing that should have made him a target. Except one thing. Sejun trains at Ki Jiu-Jitsu. So did Jaeseung. And somewhere in that overlap is the only reason anyone would go after a man who never hurt anybody. He doesn't share that theory with Su-hyeon. He doesn't tell Hajin. He sits with it alone the way people do right before they make a decision nobody's going to like. Half a world away, Jaeseung is having a different kind of conversation. He's already carved through a warehouse full of men who know more than they're saying, working a dealer who once made the mistake of crossing him. The same dealer who's currently missing an arm because of it. Jaeseung wants two things: how the new drug is getting into the country and whether there's a cure. The dealer calls him a crazy bastard and negotiates for time like a man who understands exactly how little leverage he has left. 3 days. That's what he gets. Then Jaeseung's phone rings. Su-hyeon, telling him about Jaeseung, asking about Hajin in the same breath, because that's always the first name out of his mouth when something goes wrong. Protect her first, sort out the rest after. He's summoned somewhere else before he can finish processing it. A VIP wants to see him. Turns out the VIP is the President of the United States, greeting Jaeseung like an old friend at a diner that isn't just a diner. Whatever history put those two men in the same room, it's the kind of history that gets someone killed for asking about it out loud. The president has requests, plural. None of them explained yet. Back in a shipping container somewhere less comfortable, Jungho is running his own version of Jaeseung's interrogation, cornering a man who calls himself Team Leader Kang, though not the one anyone in Korea has met. This one talks fast, breaks fast, swears he'll tell Jungho everything he knows. Nobody's said what that everything is yet. Back home, the fallout keeps stacking. Su-hyeon has no cure to offer, only smaller doses and time. In a jail cell states away, Lee Young-don is falling apart from the same drug, hands shaking, eyes hollow, a preview nobody wants to look directly at, least of all Sejun, who's now taking the same substance just to keep pace with Han Junwoo. Hajin sees where this is heading before Sejun says it out loud. She tells him to stop trying to end this with his own 2 hands, to get out before it wrecks him the way it's wrecked everyone who came before him. He doesn't argue. He also doesn't stop. A cap pulled low, no sunglasses this time. A story about picking up a family member's belongings. Sejun walks into Han Junwoo's office building alone, using Jaeseung's name to get past the front desk, taking an elevator up toward a man who just proved exactly what he's capable of doing to someone who gets in his way. Han Junwoo is at his desk, getting chewed out by a coworker who has no idea what he's talking to. The cap comes off. I finally found you.